Hello, everybody. Well, I don't want to second guess this after everything that went wrong yesterday, and I am, after all, wearing the same stripy jumper, so it's risky, but it does appear that the stream is very stable today. Fingers crossed. Touch wood. So please do let me know in the comments if you can, or in the live chat if you're watching on YouTube, if you can see me and if you can hear me okay. Looks to me like everything is working fine, so welcome back. So I think pretty much everybody knows what we're here for today. I'm going to wrap up. This is now the 4th session in this little mini-series, so I'm going to wrap up everything that we've been through so far. So first the value study, then we mix the locals on the next day, and then mixed colors for, went through the colors for the light and the shadow, and painted the toilet roll, which I still have. Yeah, so I'm going to get straight to it. I'm going to start painting straight away. I try not to go too fast today. If I do go too quickly at any point and you've got any questions about anything that I do, just pop a question in the comment on Facebook or in the live chat on the YouTube video. And by some internet magic trickery, I can see both at the same time. So I will see. Okay, so let's switch over. Looks like everything is good. Thank you very much, everybody. That's great to hear. Easel time. We're on the easel cam and the palette cam. So let's get started. So I haven't done any prep at all on the panel or anything. So we're starting from a completely blank panel, ampersand gesso board panel, 10 inches by 8 inches. So the first thing I want to do is get my lovely little jar and pop a little bit of linseed oil and a slightly smaller amount of solvent. I use pure gum turpentine for my solvent. Now, actually, I've been using this like cold pressed linseed oil for a very long time. And someone asked me recently, what's the difference between that and refined? And I thought, you know what, I don't really know. So I went and looked it up. And the main difference is that refined dries more quickly. And cold pressed is often used in paints because it has better wetting properties. But wetting means, I believe, that it will work better for turning the pigment into the paste that we're used to using in our oil paints. Wetting. So it may actually be better to use refined, and I think what I will probably do is get hold of some refined linseed oil and give it a try. And perhaps this is just my innate material snobbery that has made me stick with cold pressed linseed oil for so long. So once that is down on the panel, I wipe it off with some kitchen roll. Like almost all of it. If you do this, it's very easy to end up with too much oil on there. You want like just the thinnest layer left when you're done. So, I'm going to do a little bit of paintbrush juggling, and then I'm going to mix a small amount of color that I'm going to use for drawing out, and it's going to be mostly titanium white. Should I go through the palette? I haven't been through the palette, have I, today yet? So I've got titanium white, cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, quinacridone rose, raw umber, burnt umber, and ivory black. Only have out the colors that I need. You could say this is a limited palette, but in terms of the subject, it's not limited at all because it will allow me to hit all the colours that I need. That's a little bit on the dark side. Generally like to rough out fairly flat. So if you're painting along with me, do pop a little comment in to let me know. It's always nice to hear. When I'm teaching like a workshop, I do quite a lot of teaching online, as probably a lot of you know. And what we do when we have live sessions in the workshops, we usually have one a week, and then we have like 2, 4, 6. We have breaks on the hour, so everyone can get a cup of tea. Otherwise, it can get a bit too intense, I think. I get tired, and it's, you know, some of this stuff is quite, painting realism is not the easiest thing in the world, you know. It can be quite intense sometimes, especially if you're trying to do your best work. Victoria's painting along brilliant. That's funny. Some of you follow each other already on Instagram. I've really got to get my Instagram thing together. I have little spurts when I'm busy on it for a while, and then I just kind of forget that it's there. And of course, the Instagram algorithm doesn't really like you very much if you do that. So it doesn't show your stuff to very many people. It likes people who are there all the time. Well, at least like once every day or two, I suppose. And I'm just not consistent enough with it. I had a little spate of making little 1-minute videos that I actually really enjoyed doing. They were fun. I'll have to do some more of those. But there comes a point where you spend so much time twiddling about with video and live sessions and teaching and whatnot that you actually don't paint so much. Just make paintings just for the sake of making paintings, you know. So I'm just gridding this up roughly. So I'm going to follow the same process today. I'm going to draw it out quickly just to make sure that everything is roughly in the right position. Then going to paint all of the background, except it's going to be with colour this time, although it's mostly low chroma. And then we'll go straight in on the apple. I'll do a little bit on the folds, I think, today as well, you know, and we'll just see how far we go. I'll try to make a nice painting. Probably going to be here for about 2 hours today, I imagine, because I'll probably start gassing on about something or other at some point, and you know how it is. So this is how I rough out my drawings. I find the top point, bottom point, furthest left, furthest right. And then you can also look at where the outline crosses the grid. If you've got a grid like this, it's a bit like working sight size, but with sight size you would only have the single plumb line and you would take measurements. Doing it this way, I'm just estimating all of the points. But by the time you've got that in, you know, it's hard to go really wrong, too wrong from there, you know. The top bit is flat and then it kind of curves around here. I do all this with straight lines. It is easier to judge the character of curves if you draw them with straight lines than if you try to do the curve straight off. That little gem of drawing I have to thank Harold Speed for and his book, The Practice and Science of Drawing. And it's basically why everybody teaches, you know, like, as far as I'm aware, that I think they teach it in the ateliers, but, you know, most people teach drawing as like straight line blocking. Works really well. So that should be reasonably accurate. Alison says, Paul, are you mainly painting from photos only for these classes? Or are you doing that with your other work as well? Or do you paint from life just for your own work? Just curious. It's a good question. So I spent probably about 15 years working only from life. And if I'm really, really honest about it, I was slightly, I was referring to my material snobbery earlier. I was a little bit like, I suppose I kind of had a bit of the attitude of, this is real painting. If you do it from life, it's harder. I mean, it is harder. There's no two ways about that. But I guess it depends on the kind of painting you're doing. But I'm just roughing in these folds now. Really beautiful. So for about 15 years, I only ever worked from life and never worked from photos, religiously worked from life only. And then when I started to teach online, I realized that photos were invaluable for teaching because I could share the photo and then people would be working from exactly the same reference as me. And it's very difficult to have a setup when you're teaching that shows the subject from life in enough detail. It's just practically difficult to set up the cameras, basically. I'm going to put the cast shadow in there. That was a little bit out my drawing there. This should be going up here, I think. So I started using them, and then a funny thing happened, and I started to realize that some of the painting that I did looked exactly like the painting that I did from life, even when I did it from photos, when I was demonstrating stuff. And I thought, well, this is odd. I could ignore this and stick to my bias or my prejudice, if you like, about painting from photos, or I could investigate this a little bit further. So I did. And I started doing some work from photos. And of course, when I'm teaching, it's all from photos, almost all from photos anyway. Like the color course is I've just refreshed the color course that I have, and that has both, So you set up your own subjects from life, and there's also, I've now added a bunch more material which is from photos, because there is a real advantage in teaching from photos. And knowing that people have the same reference, especially when you use Munsell for the colors, and if other people have a Munsell book too, it's brilliant because it means the problem with photos is it changes the color, right? It changes the values, it changes the chroma and the hues, all of it, a little bit. And it's difficult to compensate for that. I think I'm getting better at it in Photoshop, but it's a bit tricky. With Munsell, I can take color notes from the actual subject and then tell people the exact color that I'm mixing. And if they also have a Munsell book, a student book, they're going to get really close to those colors as well, which is brilliant because it also means even though things may look very different on a screen, we've got a cast shadow here as well coming up to the side of the apple. Things may look very different on different screens, and there's no way I can know what someone else's screen looks like. I'm going to also mark in the shadow, the edges of the shadows. If we use Munsell, it takes all of that out of the equation and makes everything work better. Hi, Chrysalida. Hi, Mariana. Good to see you. Alison says, I'm curious as I'm wondering if it's easier to match Munsell from photos versus life. I don't ever match Munsell chips from photos because, there are various initiatives underway to help with that. There's some software you can get. In fact, our very own Michelle Clamp, wonderful watercolor painter who is here, I hope you don't mind me letting the cat out of the bag on this, Michelle, is also working on an online version, which is really fascinating. Anna, the drawing book is called The Practice and Science of Drawing by Harold Speed. You're very welcome, Alan. Hello, Diane, good to see you. Went out gardening. Gardening's not more important than painting. Okay, so I'm roughed in at this point. I'm pretty happy, so I'm going to start mixing the colours for the background. Now, I'm not strictly Munselling these, I'm pretty much judging them, but I do know as you can see from the photo on the right-hand side on the screen, I do know what the values are going to be. And I know that they're all pretty much oranges, apart from the light part of the cloth where it's going to tend a little bit towards very slightly low chroma, like a red-purple. But let's start with the background here. So I know I want like a value 3.5 here. I want a 4.5 there. So if I get my value scale, like 3.5, value 3.5 is here. It looks really dark. And 4.5 is here. So I'm going to mix those values up. I'm going to use mostly raw umber. Bring in a little bit of burnt umber, because I think the main difference between raw umber and burnt umber in terms of the hue is that raw umber is a yellow-orange and burnt umber is a red-orange. I'm going to bring in some white and bring it up to the value that I want, and then I'm going to decide if I think I want to drop the chroma. I'm probably going to want to drop the chroma a bit. Hopefully you will. If I use a word that you don't know, like chroma, hopefully you'll all have seen the other sessions when I was talking about what chroma was. Just ask, just ask. Like they always say, there are no stupid questions. Okay, that's too light. So I want to really nail this value, I'm not all that bothered about the hue, to be honest with you, but the value needs to be absolutely nailed, and I want the chroma to be good as well, to be close. So the chroma needs to be low. If it's too high, that value looks good, but the chroma is definitely higher than I want. I want it much nearer to neutral, nearer to grey, if you like. So I'm going to mix up black and this, basically black and white, to the same value. Value to value, remember, value to value. And this is going to be what I'm going to use to drop the chroma. It's a bit dark. This value scale, hopefully you'll have seen the link for this. I'm going to email out links to everything that I've used, in these sessions, and also links to the replays of all of. So I'm mixing between these now, all of the live sessions. That looks all right. Oh, so I've dropped the chroma like quite a long way down there. I don't know what the chroma is. I don't really know what the hue is, but I know it's a yellow-orange, which shadows on neutral surfaces often are in my room, and I think they are probably in most interiors. Ruby, thank you. That's really helpful. The printed value scale, yeah, you can get it on eBay. So if you go to eBay and you look for Munsell value scale, you should find it. Okay. Let's get a nice big chunky brush. Cornelison Hog, number 8. I'm going to get a little bit of oil on it first. And let's whack this value down. Look how dark that looks. Looks too dark, right? And that's because we're judging it against the white of the panel. I'm just going to take this all the way down into the cast shadow, because if I squint down, this division here in the shadow between the cloth and the background isn't obvious to me. So, and then I want slightly lighter version as we go into the light. So I'm just going to mix a bit of this lighter value into it. It's going to drop in chroma, which is fine. So I want 4.5. It's about right. And this is where the couch is really nice, because the brush just kind of flows, and you can get this a really nice, I think anyway, brushy kind of chunky quality to the strokes. Whizzle a little bit between those. I like a nice brushy background. So let's mix up some values for the cloth. I'm going to paint the cloth like in really simplified terms to start with. So it probably won't look very much like cloth at the beginning, but as long as we get the values right and the colours are somewhere close, I'll be happy. I'm going to keep that back because that was our background colour. Always handy to keep. Paul Cantore value scale. Thank you, Alison. Yeah, you go to ebay.com, search for that value scale. This is absolutely brilliant. It's an accurate Munsell scale in half steps and it's $10. You can put paint on it to check your values. You know, it's great. So if you want to do some value studies, you know, why not use this, mix up, say, every second value, and you'll have a really accurate, perceptually accurate value scale to paint with. And it's $10. It's like, you know, that's a few coffees, isn't it? It's brilliant. Okay, so I'm thinking about this area around here. That's like a value 6, okay? So I know it's going to be in hue terms, it's going to probably still be a little bit of a kind of an orange because it's in semi-shadow there. But I'm going to let the chroma drop a little bit because the chroma will be higher in the shadows on this cloth because the local is basically has almost no chroma at all. So in indoor light, we value 6, yeah. Too light, Paul. In indoor light, on a surface like this, which has basically no chroma, you will find that the ambient light in the room gets reflected into the shadows, and the shadows have a bit more chroma. They're slightly orange. You could call them brown. Because I'm a Munsell dude, I think of brown as a low value, low chroma orange. I'm not being pedantic, honestly. It just really helps to know what hue colors are for when you're doing your mixing. I think this will probably be all right. It's a little bit light. We'll bring it down a little bit. So what I'm gradually putting in here is just some of the black and some of my oranges, which is my raw umber and my burnt umber, just to get something that's close to neutral, but not quite. Has a little bit of chroma. And that's value 6, and I'm going to paint all of this, just one big block. Notice that I don't paint into the shadow. When I'm painting, when I'm roughing out at the beginning, I take the shadows to be separate things in themselves, separate areas of light that I want to paint differently. We're going to be a little bit darker when we get over this side of the fold. So this is probably like about a value 4 or 5 I'm knocking out there. Some of this stuff I will tend to just kind of whack it in. As long as the values are really good, you know, that's what I'm mostly concerned with at the moment, getting good values. The chroma, the value of this shadow is like 2.5, you know. Let's get that shadow in. So the value is like, if I put my value scale up there, it's here, you know, it's dark. I almost guarantee you if you did this on a white panel and you were laying it out, that you wouldn't make that shadow dark enough, the shadow of the fold. And funnily enough, when I did the value study, I was looking at it the other day. It must be around somewhere. Oh, here it is. My shadow isn't dark enough, you know. Not quite dark enough. So that wants to be like a value 2, and we want it to have a bit of chroma, so I'm getting some raw umber and some burnt umber. I'm not very exact about this, as long as I'm pretty close, you know, I'm not going to sweat it too much. I'm going to bring it up with white, which is going to raise the value, because both of these are about a value 1 out of the gate, so I need the value to come up to a 2.5. I've gone too far there. And I'm going to check the chroma when I get there. Probably going to need to reduce it a little bit. So these are all near neutrals, verging towards orange. Brown, if you like. Low value orange. Maybe I can, if I do like auto suggestion whispering into the mic, I can convert you all to thinking in Munsell terms. Brown is a low value orange. Ivory black is a blue. Or I could do like an ASMR tape that you could play while you were asleep. Chroma is the intensity of the color. Don't forget your edges. Okay, so that's about a value 2. I think the chroma is going to be a little bit high if I just bang that in. So I'm going to get some black and white up to a value 2 as well, to bring it slightly more towards neutral. Complement mixing is bad. The hue doesn't change much in the shadow. Well, I'm going to start releasing auto-suggestion color guidance tapes. It's my new idea. What do you reckon? Shall I do it? Okay, so we're about 2.5 now. I've dropped the chroma a little bit, but I can adjust it a little bit by eye as we go. Whoa, look how dark that is. We're gonna, once I've done all of the background, if you're keeping up with me, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the edge handling. Hugely important edges. Honestly, I think being able to control your edges well is as important for creating realistic painting. It's as important as value. Doesn't get talked about much. People talk about value a lot and color a lot. Chroma doesn't get talked about enough either. So the front plane of the cloth, this cloth basically, when you think about it, if you looked at this fold from the top, you would have this shape. Like there's a plane there, and then it goes flat across there, and then there's a plane there, right? So that's that plane change. And there's a plane change here as well. So you've got 1, 2, 3 planes. The light is coming from there. So this is going to be the lightest plane. This is going to be in the middle, and this plane is going to be darker. And if you think about folds in those terms, in terms of the planes, and you work out the correct values for each plane, you'll be all right. Smaller brush now. So the front I want to be lighter than this bit here. There's definitely a little bit more light on it than that bit there. So that was like a 6, so I'm going to go a little bit lighter than that. Let's say 7. Because I need to make sure that I don't go too far up the value scale, because this is the very lightest part, and that needs to be quite a bit lighter. So hopefully this is like about a 7. Yeah, something like. Get some oil on that brush and wipe it off. You know, these are like averages I'm putting in at the moment. Can adjust these, you know, as we go along. And then this plane on the right-hand side is very light. So I'm going to go in with like a little bit of titanium white into my 7 there, and that's going to get me about a 9 or something. That's very light there. And then it starts to turn here. It's going to be like about a value 4. So let's see what I've got here. Just with what I've got, I can probably mix a value 4. A little bit darker. So once you get used to doing this, you can actually knock it out pretty fast. And although this is low, so this is this plane here. Although this is a low value, it's very thin where it folds. It's still going to be lighter than the shadow, which is like a 2.5. You know, and that's very, very simplified, but already it's kind of, you know, there's some impression of a fold. The fold is definitely lighter on the right-hand side. I need a new brush because that one's gone too dark. All right, I admit I'm messing about with the folds a little bit more than I said I would, because I'm enjoying it. It's a bit lighter there. So this is like without edge handling, okay? No edges have been harmed in the painting of this fold yet. a little bit, there's an edge plane here, and then there is a cast shadow here, which is a lower value coming out this way. So lower value, a bit more chroma in the cast shadow. Just building up blocks, basically. And that's brilliant to hear. She says, I'm converted. My first result from value study really shines out. Brilliant, brilliant. Subliminal tapes with cat scratching overlaid. Yes, and meowing. You've got to get that, the meowing when he wants to be in and asks me to open the door and doesn't actually come in. So what do we want here, right? The main light part of the cloth. I better wipe out my little bit of stuff there. It's really high. It's like value 8 to a 9. And also I'm going to mix this color separately because I want it to be slightly bluish, like not blue so much, magenta say. I want to put a tiny, tiny little touch. Look how much I've got there. Tiny bit of quinacridone rose, a little bit of black, because the red and the black, that's a blue red anyway, and with the black it's going to make kind of a very low chroma purpley color. And I'm going to mix that with my titanium white, which is also kind of a bluish white, in order to get a very low chroma, very slightly blue-red, hopefully value 9. Yeah, great. Now this change is in the photo, this change of hue, but it is actually there on the cloth, you know. So this is, I'm going up to the edge of the cast shadow of the apple. I'm not going to paint the cast shadow. I'm not going to paint into it because that's a separate light area. There's something different going on there that I want to. So I want to paint that separately. So we're kind of, I mean, the secret to cloth, I believe, is to build the planes in a very simplified way, a simplified and clear way to begin with, and then to do your edge handling. And that's going to get you like 90% of the way there. At least. Gets a little bit darker as we go over to this side because there's some drop off in the light. Okay, now I'm going to paint the cast shadow, and then we're going to have some fun with edges. So the cast shadow is like about a value 3. And I want a little bit more chrome. I'm going to put a tiny bit of yellow ochre in this as well. That's probably a little bit too much. Drop the chroma a little bit. If anybody wants to know the actual chroma numbers, if there are any Munsellites out there watching, I can tell you. But it might be more instructive if I show you on the page where it would be. So I want like a value 3, about a bit more chroma. So this color is probably like, you know, in the Munsell book, you get pages of all different hues. So like all the chips on this page here are the same hue. Don't worry too much about the numbers. This is basically, it's a version of a YR, yellow, red, which is, you know, Munsell terms for orange, right? So this is a value 3 that I just mixed. So if I get some on my palette knife, we can see what the chroma is, and it's actually not that high. It is slightly higher than that one, a bit more intense than that one, but not as intense as that one. So that is chroma 2, and that is chroma 4. See, it gets more intense over there. That's 6, so it goes like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Higher chroma, 14. So it's probably about 2.5 or 3 or something, you know. But I'm not that bothered about it being an exact number. I can adjust it. But this is the highest chroma shadow that I put in so far, probably. I'm going to use this for the cast shadow of the apple. And you need to make sure, by the way, when you paint like this, for when you come to do the edge handling, it actually gets a little bit lighter as it moves away from the apple. So I'll suggest that a little bit, and then it gets darker as you get closer. So I'm going in with raw umber and burnt umber together just to get that darker bit there. You need to make sure when you're doing edge handling, you need to make sure that there's enough paint on the panel, because when you do this bit that I'm about to do, if there's not enough paint on there, it won't work. So let's say this edge here, Karen says, what software are you using to share all the images on one screen? It's called OBS, Open Broadcasting Software, maybe? OBS. It's free and it's open source and it's absolutely brilliant. So this is, if this was just a table edge, I would want a hard edge, but it's cloth, right? It's soft. So it's a soft edge. There's a curve there. So I don't want to show an immediate plane change. I want to show a curve. So I'm going to soften all of this edge. I'm going to very light pressure here. I'm barely whispering this brush. It's a dry brush. It's a synthetic 1/2 inch, slightly worn. Drag it across like that. Wipe it off. And then pull. It's just a really handy way to do some quick edge handling. Very, very light pressure. I mean, I'm basically just resting the brush. Can you see the difference there? Suddenly that looks like a curve. So this part here needs to be curved too. Nice. So here, right, I've got a form, the edge of a form against something else. So I'll keep that edge sharp. But this edge here would want to be soft, because this is a curve. So I'll soften that a bit. This is a cast shadow. So a cast shadow, the edge is harder where it's closer to the object that's casting it, and it gets softer as you go further away. So I start with small, little, gentle hatches, and then let them get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then we drag. And you start, it's starting to appear. All these interior edges are within the form, so these all want to be soft. I need to keep this hard edge here, though. That would be a soft edge. This is a cast shadow, so we'll have a soft edge on the end of this. Have I got enough paint there? No, I haven't even filled it in. Missed a bit. Soften this. So this is a cast shadow, so it gets softer the further away it goes from the object that's casting it, just the same. And this wants to be softened as well. And it's starting to take on, there's obviously, if you wanted to finish it really well, there would be a lot more to do, but I'm trying to show you this would be a little bit softer. I'm trying to show you in broad strokes, if you like, how you can kind of create a feeling of form and light just with values and edges. So this is going to be like really, I want a soft edge here. So the object that casts this shadow is off the picture. It's over here. So it's going to be softish there, but as it moves further away from that object, it's going to get softer. So the hatches get a bit larger. This is why I do the background first, so I can drag right into the apple and then clean it off afterwards. So I can get incredibly soft edge going right behind the apple. Beautiful edge. And then clean up the edge of the apple. So if I have a nice hard edge on the apple there, it will really create this feeling of this being behind, this soft edge being behind it. Works a treat. This I want soft, this edge, because it's in the background and I don't want it to compete. Again, we have a cast shadow, great, time for some fun. So slightly soft, and then as you get further away, it gets softer and softer, so bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger hatches, and then drag. Same here. And then drag. Cast shadow. So we've already got like a, you know, the values are pretty good. The chroma doesn't look too bad, you know. I kind of dashed it out a little bit, but, you know, everything is really close to neutral at the moment, but already we've got a bit of a feeling of light and form coming in. We have a slightly lighter area here. But, you know, it's starting to feel a little bit like cloth, even without any detail, especially at all. I mean, you saw how that was built up. It was just the values. All we've got going on there is values and edges. But the kind of the environment, if you like, has been created. Needs a bit of fiddling, needs a bit of sorting out here and there. But we're basically like, well, you know, that's enough to move on. And then we can always look at some of it later if we need to. We want to sort this out a little bit. I've got some, my brush went a little bit awry there. And I've got this weird thing happening here, like the fold seems to disappear off because there's a little gap there. So I need to put a little bit of darker value in there just to show that that is actually, it's not a floating fold. It does not float up into the air. You know, I'm not going to do any more on that for the moment. Apple time. It's Apple time. I've been looking forward to this. This is all going to look so wrong until the white is covered. What I love about studies like this and fast alla prima paintings like this at this stage is that you know that there's something there. Your brain is telling you that there is something there. There has to be. Otherwise, why could there be a cast shadow? I'm going to lighten this value behind it a little bit. I think it's got too dark, which is going to show the cast shadow a little bit more as what it actually is. And I'll lighten it a little bit here, just so we've got a suggestion of that back edge without overdoing it, hopefully. But, you know, it's already, it's an environment. It's an environment of light and form already at this stage. Does that join up? Kind of, not really. It'll be all right. It'll all come out in the wash. Colour mixing time. So you remember when I did the toilet roll? And worked out the colours for the light and the dark, and these colours were very close to the colours of the apple. So I'm going to mix versions of those colours, slightly changed, but basically pretty much the same ones. Let's start with the red. So the local, anybody who wants to know, this chip that I've got here in Munsell terms is a 7.5R. That just means it's a red. It's a slightly orangey red. The value is 3, so on our value scale, it's like here, it's dark. And the chroma is 10, which means it's quite high, you know, it's quite intense. So I'm going to mix this by getting a big splodge of quinacridone rose. I'm going to mix over here and then I'm going to lay the colours out over to the left. Whack some cad yellow into it because I want it to go orange, but let's not go crazy. I want it to raise the value a little bit and go more orange. All right. That looks good, but the chroma is too high. Let me check the value. The value is good, and the hue looks good, but the chroma is too high, so I'm going to drop it. I need a low chroma red to drop it with, orange red, burnt umber. But before I do anything with it, I need to mix it to the same value, so I'm going to put some white in it until I get it to a value 3. I don't know if you can hear it, but Banjo, my cat, has begun to snore. And when he snores, it's probably not loud enough for the mic to pick it up, but when he snores, he goes, ooh, ooh, like that. Are we a value 3? Yeah, it looks all right. Mix some of that in, drop the chroma until I'm happy that I'm fairly close to this chip. Someone asked me a while ago, actually they asked it generally on a forum run on Facebook group run by Richard Murdoch, brilliant painter and also very knowledgeable about Munsell, called Munsell, actually, the forum is. Gone too dark, so I need to lighten it. I'm probably going to drop the chroma. I'm going to bring in a little bit of yellow and a bit more red to keep the chroma. Someone said, what's the point in the chips? Why don't you just, instead of matching to the chip, why don't you actually match to the thing? And I think, personally, one of the big values of the chips is that once you've worked with it for a while, is you build up a mental image in your brain of the color range of paint. And you also, knowing the hue that you're trying to get, if you know the hue of your tube paints, makes it much easier to choose the right tube paints to begin with. That's good, but it's gone. I've dropped a little bit too much chrome, I think, so I'm going to bring it up a little bit. But that's all right. So this is pretty much our local. I've raised the value slightly because let's test this against the apple. I'm going to get a bit on the back of there. I know, it looks good to me. What do you think? I think we'll go with this. And there's a really fascinating book called Peak by Anders Ericsson, which is basically about practice and how to practice effectively. And he says in that book that the point of all practice, whether you're practicing to drive a car better, to speak a language better, play a musical instrument, mix color, handle edges, the point of practice is to build a stronger mental representation of what it is you're trying to create. And that, I think, is one of the biggest values of Munsell. So I want this one now, which is my light. Anyone who is Munselling and wants to know, this also is 7.5R. The value is 5 because we're going up a bit as we go into the light. And the chroma is 12 because I have found in the course of painting many spheres from life over many years and judging the colours of them with the Munsell chips. So this is the same quinacridone rose, and I've added a bit more cad yellow this time, bringing the value up. I'm not there yet in terms of value, so I'm going to bring it the rest of the way with white. Otherwise, the chroma is going to get out of hand. So this should bring the value up to where I want it to be, without the chroma going too crazy. I mean, I want it to be high chroma, but not ridiculous. That's good. What was I talking about? The area of highest chroma is in the light, not in the half-tone. I was having a discussion with my good friend Richard about this on Facebook the other day, and he was saying he often finds that there is a range of chromas across the surface of an object, some possibly caused by changes in the local and some possibly caused by light. So watch this space, because we're going to investigate this, because we have slightly different methods and we've found slightly different results. So it's going to be really interesting for us to compare notes. Try and find some way that we can investigate this. Be interesting. So the dark one, the value is really low on this one. It's like value 2. It's 10R because it's going more orange. So I'm going in with quite a lot of burnt umber, because that's basically an orange. We know this now, right? Burnt umber is an orange. Raw umber is an orange yellow. It's going to be too dark. Yep. So actually, what value is the number there? It's 1.5, so that's probably about right. Can you say the number of the lighter red? Yeah, this is value 5, the lighter red, and it's a chroma 12. You know what, I'm going to keep that because I want it to be, hang on, well, maybe that's too much. I'm going to put a little bit of cad yellow in it to bring the value up a little bit. I'm using the cad yellow because it's going to give me a bit more chroma, because I'm dropping chroma now because I've gone right down the value scale. As you drop down the value scale, you lose chroma, as you can see in the Munsell book. Like this color, this orange yellow, reaches its highest chroma at this value. You can't mix that chroma at that value. You cannot do it in paint. It's not possible, or here. So I'm trying to maximize the chroma in my shadow color. I'm happy with that. I think that'll do nicely. So this is like value 2, and the chroma of the chip is 6. I've beaten the chroma a little bit. So in terms of this page, like a chroma 6 is there. It's good because chroma goes in, like in Munsell, it goes in 2, 4, 6. You know, it's just the way this book is, the number of chips there are. You could have a book that had double the number of chips and had chroma in single steps, I'm sure. That's the red done. So the chroma is 6. The value is the value of the chip is 2, but I wanted it to be slightly lower. So I've taken most of the values that I'm using from the photo, but I've taken color notes from the actual object itself, this apple. So I'm using a combination of sources here. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to say, Alison was asking earlier on about working from life or from photos. What I find myself doing a lot now when I do have time to work on my own stuff is I start a painting from life because I like that immediate response to the subject. And then because I paint flowers a lot and they die and stuff and move, if I'm working on something over a number of sessions, I will quite often use the photo, get it as close as I can to the right color, and then use the photo for let's give this a little bit of a atmosphere. Use the photo for detail of the form. I do like to soften things up like a little bit with a slightly rough brush like this. I suppose you could say it's just a personal bit of handwriting that I like to do. Let's mix this. So this is the local of the color of the spots. This apple is getting a little bit old now. Poor little apple. So it's like that color there. So if anybody wants to know, this is 5Y, which in Munsell terms is a middle yellow. 5Y. God, I'm getting paint everywhere. I'm not being very disciplined with my Munsell book. I've had this book 10 years and I have to admit some of the pages, the ones that I use a lot, are absolutely covered in paint. And considering it costs £1,000 to buy this book now, I should be more careful. This is 5Y. It's a slightly greenish yellow. The number doesn't matter, it's just, you know, it's just a convenience. So the value is 5 and the chroma is 6. So that's like 5Y, 5, 6. It being the value is 5 just means it's in the middle. You know, I remember when I first came across this stuff, I was like, what are all those numbers? It's so confusing. Can't you just teach me to mix color? Can't I just... But once you get used to it, it's fine. So we did this the other day and I started with... mixed this color the other day, and I started with my go-to that I immediately went to was the yellow ochre, but it turned out that a better mix, which was suggested by Greta, was to start with cad yellow, sorry, and then bring it down with black. It goes too green and you need to swing it back, you know, a bit more orange, but it actually gets you, you know, pretty close. And why is this going green? Because ivory black is, it's a blue. This is too dark. Oh, actually it's not too bad, but a little bit too dark. So I'm going to bring a bit more cad yellow. I want to nail this value, remember. I want to really nail these values. So the way I go about mixing is like I find what is going to get me close, and that usually means choosing a tube color and then choosing another one to get it to the right value. That's good, whilst also considering the chroma and stuff like that, which is why I generally wouldn't have gone for the CAD yellow, because I would have thought it was too high in chroma, but the black does drop it. I'm doing terrible at keeping up with the chat. I'm sorry, let me have a quick look. I've just been yakking away and painting, and I haven't been keeping up at all. Can you say the number? I got that one, Mariana, I told you that one, yeah. Thank you, Iris, it's good to see you too. The value of the lighter one was 5, the red. Karen says, is there a difference for tube colours and a reference for tube colours and their Munsell equivalent? Some acrylic colours have it, but not all. Very few do. I think Gamblin, some of Gamblin's do. The best thing to do, I mean, I like Michael Harding paint, so I actually know most of the Munsell notations for my tube colours. None of them are exact, but they're all pretty close. Like, I know what the values and chromas of all these are, you know. And the way I've done that is basically to get my book and to check each one. It would be brilliant if they brought them out like that. It would just make things so much easier. Jim says, how do I check the Munsell chips against the scene I'm painting? If you're talking about outside, that's a whole different kettle of fish, and it depends on the direction of the light. Like if you're painting into the light, contre jour, you've got no chance, because your Munsell chip will be in shadow. So you would need the same light on the chip as you have on your subject, you know. That's really key. Victoria says, I missed the red chip Munsell notations. Okay, give me a minute. No, I'm terrible, Roberta, with my chips. They're such a mess. I wonder why Winsor & Newton would say that. Maybe they'll change their mind at some point. Or maybe it's just like a brand rivalry thing with Gamblin. You know, they're probably like taking the position that that is not art. That's like science or maths or something. It's not even art, okay? You know, it is. It just allows you to understand colour better. And anything that does that is fine. Victoria, here we go. The lightest one is 7.5 R512. The local colour is 7.5 R310. And the shadow is 10 R26, but I went slightly darker. So the next thing to do with mixing this colour is like, what's wrong with this colour? What needs to change? It's just too green. So thankfully, yellow ochre is already the perfect value, right? And yellow ochre is, talking about hues, my yellow ochre, because they all differ, that's why you need to find out for your own paints, but my yellow ochre is exactly a value 5, and it's an orange yellow. So I can mix between these, bring some yellow ochre into this, and that will just, it won't change the chroma much, it won't change the value, and it will slowly swing it more towards orange, which is what I want to happen. Bob's your uncle. Value 5. So I'm laying these out in order. So that's a value 5 and this is a value 5. But notice also, it enables you to understand some things about the colour by laying them out this way. That's the local of the red. That's the local of the yellow. So the local of the yellow is like 2 value steps lighter. And that means that its shadow colours and its light colours are also lighter. But don't forget the lesson of the toilet roll. With a lighter local, the number of steps between the shadow and the light is greater than with a darker local. All useful stuff to know. Let's mix the light colour. So the one I've got here is 5Y78. The chroma is a little bit higher and the value is higher. So let's start with, we'll go the same route. We'll start with the cad yellow and we'll bring some black in. rather less this time. So we nail the value and then we'll see what we've got. I suspect we'll have something with too high chroma because we don't need to drop the value so far. So let's mix some more. So we use less black. There's a greater proportion of cad yellow in this mix and a smaller proportion of black than the previous one. And the black is dropping the chroma. The cad yellow is high chroma. So this is going to be high chroma. Color looks good. The value is good, but the chroma is way too high. So I'm going to drop it by mixing low chroma version. So this is a green yellow. So I'm going to mix. So the closest thing I can get to a green over here is if I use a bit of black and a bit of raw umber, because raw umber is a yellow orange. So I want like a low chroma, something that's heading towards green. I need to bring it up to the same value, which is value 7, which that isn't yet. So I'm bringing in more white, value to value. That should be a subliminal one as well. Value to value. How am I doing for value? Too dark. More white, please. Oh, interesting comment. Michelle says, they, by which you mean Winsor and Newton, I say, we believe that artists are better served by looking at colour bias, which cannot always be determined straight from the hue. What nonsense. You can absolutely determine the colour straight from the hue. What utter nonsense. Oh my word. I actually like Winsor and Newton paint though. I think it's pretty good. I do use some of their paints. But they obviously don't understand very much about realist painting. Value 7, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to try and drop the chroma of this with my value 7. I'm probably going to lose value a little bit. It does happen sometimes, even if you're careful about the values, that the value drops a little bit. And I think that just has, and if it does, I'm just going to add a little bit of white. Yeah, I think it may be a tiny bit. Need to drop it further because it's still, the chroma is still too high. So this just allows me to make sure that I don't overshoot the chroma basically. Dropped it too far. And I'm a little bit, it needs to go a little bit more orange, so I'm going to mix a little bit of yellow ochre with some cad yellow up to the right value. Because I want to bring some, I want to swing it back orange. It's going to raise the chroma a little bit, but it will nicely swing the hue back towards orange. Because this also has gone a little bit too green. It is green, but not that green. Closer, but the value is dropped, so I'll bring some white in. So when you get pretty close, you can kind of stop, or you can really try and nail the color. And when you're learning this method of mixing, I personally think it really helps to, ooh, that's really good. It helps to really try and nail the colors, because it's that last little sort of couple of percentage points of trying to get the color that you really get, it really stretches you. It takes a while to get your colors prepared, to be fair. And I suppose for some people it might be frustrating to spend a lot of time mixing before you actually get to put some paint down, where you want to be like living the dream, being the artist and getting the paint on the panel. And I get it, I do get that. But this will stop you making most of the major mistakes that people make with color. I'm not kidding you. The shadow color. This goes slightly more towards orange. So we've got 2.5Y. The value is 3 and the chroma is 4. 2.5Y. I'm going to start off with raw umber. And I'm going to bring that up with... Actually, let's try something else. I'm going to try with burnt umber, which is too orange. And then I'm going to bring it up with yellow. because that will send it more towards green. I think probably I'm going to have to mix two colors of different hues to get this one. I can't remember what I did the other day for this one now. Yeah, this is too orange. So I've got a red orange, which is burnt umber, and I'm bringing the value up to where I want it to be with cad yellow. I've now overshot, I think. And this cad yellow is a yellow orange. So I've got a red orange and a yellow orange, which is obviously going to make something that's pretty orange. So that's gone slightly towards green, but yeah, too light. Bring it back down with some more burnt umber, okay. So I need this to go towards green. So if I, instead of starting with burnt umber, if I mix another one and I start it with raw umber and bring that up to the same value with cad yellow, that'll be more green. So now, value is too high. So now I've got a slightly more orange version and a slightly more green version. What I want is something between the two, more raw umber. Raw umber is a very weak tinter, so. Color bias, whatever do they mean? What nonsense. The nice thing about Munsell is that, you know, this is how you know it works, right? In terms of recognizing colors and being able to mix them, say. Overshot. In my disgust at Winsor & Newton's marketing department, I've overshot my value. You can give me the hue, the value number, and the chroma, and I can mix exactly this color that you've got in front of you without seeing it. And all that shows you is that those three things are all you need in order to accurately mix a color. There is no such thing as bias. It's just complicating the issue. What irks me about that is that it's going to confuse people and it's going to slow down people's learning, and nothing annoys me more than that. Because I've been there too, really struggling with color for a long time. It's difficult, you know, at first. But this was like, this sorted it out for me. Okay, everything is pretty good. My chip's pretty dirty actually, but my value is too high. So I'm just going to whack a little bit of burnt umber and raw umber into this to bring the value down, because I used a bit of both in the original color. I think the chroma is good. We want to go down and even a little bit more than that. I'm trying to get back down to a value 3. Again, I mean, for most, no, I've overshot. For most uses of painting, like close is close enough, you know. All right, so that's value 3, which is, funny enough, the shadow of the yellow color on the apple is the same value as the local of the red. Sorry, I'm not keeping up with the chat. It's a busy chat today. Good point. Michelle says, I suspect it leaves them room to change the colour slightly over time. Very good point. And also to be inconsistent in their colour mixing too. Janet says, it helps me when you say things like raw umber is a yellow-orange. Is that written in some short form somewhere? Honestly, no. It's just from me testing my tube paints. I mean, some raw umbers, it depends on the paint manufacturer. Some raw umbers are very green. You know, some of them are like literally like it's a yellow, which looks green when you get that far down the value scale. So it depends on your manufacturer, but usually, the paint maker, but usually it's a yellow-orange in hue. I'm not aware of anywhere that all of that stuff is written down except for Gambling Paints, which will tell you. So we got our colours mixed, you know. We got 3 colours for each of the 2 locals of the apple. Light, local, which is effectively pretty much half-tone, and shadow. Light, local, and shadow. No, it took a while, but we're there now. Ellen says, what is meant by colour bias? I don't think that's a dumb question at all, Ellen, because I haven't the faintest idea what it means either. Seriously, I have no idea. What is the number for the shadow? On the yellow one, Mariana, the value is 3. It's 2.5y. The value is 3, and the chroma is 4. 2.5y, 3, 4. Oh, Michelle got it. Thank you, Michelle. Alison says, doesn't bias just mean where it leans, e.g. raw umber is a yellow bias, the black is a blue bias? I suppose you could call it that, but why not just call it hue? And then no one is confused. It's hue. You know, if they're talking about hue, call it hue. You know, just call it what it is and keep it simple. There's no need to complicate this stuff any more than it already is. Painting is hard enough already, you know, without glorifying it and mystifying it, you know. And they call things, you know, the names they give their paints are just silly, frankly. You know, they try and give them all these romantic names, Naples yellow and all of this. Just tell me the hue, you know. Jean, how dare you use that word temperature? I'm kidding. If they mean, and Heather says, interestingly, I think it means like when a red might have a blue bias or a yellow bias, then just the hue. It's a blue-red. You know, why use the word bias? It's hue. And then everybody knows what we're talking about. This thing here. You know, you could say that this is a red with a blue bias, or you could call it a red purple. You could call it, you know, a blue red. You can just call it things to do with the hue that makes it easy to understand and nobody is confused. And that is my problem with temperature. I think it confuses people. I think we need to start putting some paint on the panel, don't we? I need to stop yakking and start putting some paint down. I'm going to use Hogs for my apple. What size? Medium-ish. So these are, oh, they're too old. I can't actually see the writing on them anymore. Listen, I'll measure the ferrule for you and give you it in inches. So the ferrule of this is, it's about 1/3 of an inch. 1, 2, 3/8 of an inch. Get some oil on them. I've got one for dark and one for light. I'm just going to put the red on first. Might have a bit of trouble with it covering, but let's see. Margie, I'm not stopping for tea on today. This being an open session, and probably most people are just watching and wanting to pick something up, and not many people will actually be painting. So yeah, when I teach, we do have it. We'd be stopping for a break by now. So the shadow color, the darkest part of the apple around here. It's having a bit of a problem covering, to be fair. You know, because it has a lot of quinacridone rose in it, which is fairly transparent. Now this bit of the apple is interesting because this is basically in shadow, except that there's a bunch of light coming down here, hitting the cloth and reflecting up into the shadow. So we're going to want to show that. So I'm going to attempt to kind of get the drawing of the outline somewhere near. This is all shadow. Because the dominant color in this shadow area is the red, I'm going to do it all red and add the little bits of yellow afterwards. So down here, like right at the bottom of the apple, it's going to be very dark where it comes down into shadow down here. And here we've got reflected light. Now the value is slightly higher, but it's still quite low. It's still only a value 3. And interestingly, the value of our local is 3. But I think what's happening here is that the light that's hitting this area here, the reflected light, is basically has been slightly affected. It's bouncing off the cloth, so it's been slightly affected by hitting this and bouncing in. So it's going to have a slightly low chroma, and it's going to be slightly more bluish. So I'm going to drop the chroma a little bit. So this is value 3, right? I know this is a value 3, and that's pretty much the value I want in my reflected light. But I'm going to drop the chroma a little bit for this bit of reflected light here. The same as I did with the cloth, I'm going to paint things in very simplified colors to start with, and then add some edge handling and a bit of nuance once we can see if things are working or not, you know. Need to sort out the fact that I've got, actually the drawing is awful here. Let's sort out that curve a little bit. And I need to bring the background up around there a bit more, so that I don't actually have this weird thin bit of background like a gap there. Shadow. Yeah, Judy says every pigment has a color bias, meaning the color encroaches a neighboring hue on the color. So just call it the hue it is, you know, just call it hue. David says this is classic. I appreciate your honesty, David. I couldn't resist buying a tube of Italian green umber. Felt convinced it would make me paint like Filippo Lippi. Did it though? And you know, I know that you've got the big Munsell book, so it would be really interesting if you checked the Munsell notation or as near as of that paint and see if you can mix it from single pigments, because I bet there's quite a few pigments in there. So let's go into the light. Oh, halftone first. So we're kind of like over here, we're kind of moving into halftone. The chroma is coming up a little bit. There's a kind of a double bump on the apple here, so there's a semi-shadow area here. So I've just mixed between my shadow and my local color to get a slightly darker area here. I'm going to leave that patch there because that's actually more yellow. And then it gets a little bit lighter again. So it gets slightly lighter again, just here where there's a bit of light coming in. So I'm thinking about the planes of the apple. You know, what's happening to the color where? For each part of the apple, I'm thinking about its orientation to the light. That's what interests me most. Is it pointing more towards the light or away from the light? If it's away from the light, I want towards my shadow color. If it's towards the light, I want my light color. So let's get our light color out for around here. And this is where I want to be creating a really, like a hard edge here against this beautiful soft edge that we've got in the background. So I'm going in with pretty thick paint and I want a nice hard edge there. And it gives this real impression of depth. So I'm going to take this up to about there. And then there's some light, there's some red here. So I'm looking at each part of the apple and I'm thinking about, is it facing more towards the light or away from the light? So I'm just going to take this up this far for now. Just trying to get the right color in the right place at the moment. Reflected light down here. That's going to get slightly lighter. Drop in chroma. Okay, so let's have a look at the yellow now. I've got any more brushes that size? No, actually going to go a little bit smaller anyway for the yellow. Because the yellow area is generally smaller, so I've got running out of brushes at the size I like. These two are, this is Cornelison's, this is a 3 in Cornelison terms. So in terms of the width of the ferrule, that's like 2/8 of an inch, 4/16. I've got a light and a shadow, just to kind of keep the colours fairly clean if I can. This is like the busiest chat ever. It's a really fascinating conversation, and I'm busy painting. I want to just stop and read everything. Thank you, Amber. That means a lot. I can't tell you what that means to me. I've been completely dumb for years and not able to make sense of all the theory stuff. And boom, I understand. That is fantastic to hear. Absolutely fantastic. Simplifying it, that is my thing, Paul Joseph says. Instruction to simplify things. That's what I'm trying to do more than anything else. Break things down and simplify them. Let's get some more colours on. And yes, it would be great to be teaching more in person, but obviously that's a bit of a problem anyway at the moment. So I teach exclusively online. Light colour for the yellow is around here. So there's a big kind of yellow area, the yellow-green area around there. I just want to get the colours in roughly the right place at the moment. Over here still, so we're in the light. So this is the light colour for the red. This is the light colour for the green-yellow. So this whole plane is facing the light. This area of the apple is facing the light. So I use both light colours here. And I should hopefully be somewhere near, right? We go down into here, it starts turning away from the light. That's looking a bit too high in value. I'm probably going to need to drop that, which I can bring in a little bit of my local to drop that down a little. I'm going to ignore the highlight for now. I'm going to put that in a little while. I'm going to bring the value of the cloth down a little bit around the apple here, and also there's just a hint of light hitting the apple and reflecting back onto the cloth there. So let's bring that in a little bit there, just a tiny, I just mixed in a tiny bit of the apple colour. Around here, this is all slightly lower value. I want to keep this hard edge though there. So as we're gradually turning away from the light, just the same as with the toilet roll, the value drops. Gets a little bit lighter over here again to correspond with this lighter part here, where you see just a little bit of a plane change towards the light again. Just painting patches for now. A little bit darker here, so I'll put in a little bit of the shadow color where the value drops, where it corresponds to this darker bit here. So we're kind of modeling this little bulge. This is kind of like half-tone area, so I'll use my darker green. Okay, I'm going to start. I'm going to do a little bit of edge handling on this now to soften some of these transitions. It's very simplified at the moment. I'm going to use this, which is another Winsor & Newton Scepter Gold. I wonder what the color bias of this handle is. It's a Scepter Gold, really nice brushes, synthetic. I think it's like partly synthetic and some natural bristle. Flat. No paint on it, it's dry. So I just want to, I'm looking at the transitions from the shadow into the light, and I want to soften these in the same way that I did everything else in the folds. Hatch and then drag. Except for the transitions between the two locals, because they are actually quite sharp over here. They're fairly sharp. Let's see if we're starting to get some idea of form. This is too light here. This red part here is too light. Looks like much more of a bump there than on the actual apple, doesn't it? You know, so I need to bring that down in value. I've let it get too high, and there's too much bumping going on there. This needs to be more shadow. So you can kind of almost like sculpt the form with the color. I think I need to go maybe even down a bit more in value than that, right on this part. So I've brought some raw umber in to drop that value right down there. So we're into kind of adjustment territory now. The basic colors are on. I'm squinting down, they look fairly good. I need to kind of, like, my transitions between my two locals are very simplified at the moment, so I need to manage those a little bit. And I'm not happy with this area here of my orange, the yellow. Green, it doesn't really look like it's curving yet, and I think it's because I dropped my value too much on the light part here, so I'll bring that light back in. I think I did drop the value too much there. Inevitably, there's going to be some bleed of the colors one to another, but that I'm not too bothered by that because it actually does happen on the apple as well. Aaron says, have you ever painted on aluminium panel? No, but I have got some, but I've just never got round to it. We need real area of shadow down here. This brush is a little bit fat for that, but let's get it in there anyway. So this area around here in the light, I've just kind of whacked those colors in, so I'm going to try and look at those a little bit more carefully now. So I'm going to get a smaller brush, two smaller brushes, one for the yellow and one for the red in the light. Okay. So this one will be the yellow in the light, this one will be the red in the light. So this yellow actually comes quite a way down into the red here. So I'm putting this on fairly thick so that it actually covers, you know. And it breaks up that part of the two colors that we've got there into more of the variation of the spots that we get actually on the apple. So I'm not so much bothered about painting these spots exactly as they appear on the apple as I am making sure that I use the colors to create a feeling of form with it. So it's a bit like when I'm painting flowers and looking at the petals, I'm trying to understand the light on the petals so that I can then almost like construct them, you know, so that there might not be look exactly the same as the petals on the flower, but as long as it creates a form, then you know, I'm happy. Okay, here we go. David says, if you don't want a muddy colour, mix a green yellow with a green blue to get a good green. Seriously, all muddy is low chroma. People use muddy for low value, low chroma colours. People use chalky for high value, low chroma colours. If you're losing chroma, different hues isn't going to get you there. Understanding chroma is going to get you there. Really, you will never, if you use this kind of approach to mixing, you will never have a problem with what people call muddy or chalky colour. Your colour will always be clean, and you will have the amount of chroma that you need in the place that you need it. There's a lot of these little spots. So as I'm going around into the half tone to put these yellow spots in, I'm going down the value range of my colours because we're turning away from the light now. So I want these little yellow spots here to be consistently kind of darker. Now down here in the reflected light, you can see a little bit of, they're going to go slightly lighter again because there's a bit of light coming into them. I've got to make sure I don't overdo that though. So this is going to be between the light and the halftone color. And the challenge, I think, with these little dots is not to make them uniform. It's going to be really, really easy to end up with very uniform dots, which would pretty much, you know, like make a pattern out of them is what I mean, which would pretty much destroy it. And make it look distinctly weird. Slightly lighter on this side. And then we go around into shadow again. So by the time we're around here for our yellow dots, we are right into shadow. So I'll actually pick up the shadow color and put them in here with the shadow color for the yellow. And that'll be the right color for them. That's the green in shadow. God, my drawing's awful, isn't it? I've got to sort out this edge of my apple, which has wandered quite a long way from what it should be. It's not very appley. So because I'm in shadow here, I use my shadow yellow. Does that make sense? And this is going to be the right color to go on there. And then you can mix, you know, because like here, I'm coming out into the light, so I start to go up a little bit, up the value range, but not too far. In the deep shadow, it's all the shadow color. And they're kind of difficult to see, these colors. You know, I mean, it would be incredibly difficult to judge, but if you approach the color this way, it really does make it a lot easier. You know, it becomes, I wouldn't say effortless quite, but it certainly becomes significantly easier to figure out what color you need where. I think my value has gone too high in the red here, so I'm going to bring it down a little bit. So the other thing that's nice about having the colors laid out like this. Notice, by the way, that, you know, there's no complement mixing going on or any of that nonsense here. This is like I'm using the actual colors that I need, the right colors for the light and shadow. And the nice thing about having them laid out carefully like this is that I have, if I need to drop the value of an area or raise the value of an area, I have really fine control over how I do that just by mixing between my colors. So I'm going to bring the red up a little bit here, slightly darker. Got a little bit of red across the top, little patch of red across here, and it's semi-shadow. So you just need to make sure that you're consistently using the right color in the right place. So if I'm in a dark part of the apple, I use this color on my red and that color on my yellow. If I'm a light part, I use that color on my red and that color on my yellow. And then we're going to bring it all together, soften it a little bit, and put the highlight in, and then we'll see where we are. Just want to get these little, so this is the reflected light, so slightly higher value, little dots here. This apple, by the way, is a Chasely, it's called a Chasely kernel. And so I can see, like here, I can see my value is too high, so I can just mix a lower value and drop it. And it comes from my friends Helen and Dave, their traditional Gloucestershire apple farm, where they grow these apples without any spraying or chemicals of any kind, and they've actually saved some varieties of apple, traditional Gloucestershire apples, from extinction. And as if that weren't enough by itself, Helen plays a mean accordion, and Dave is a brilliant baritone sax player. And they're also very lovely people. I think we're a bit high chroma over here. I think the yellow in the light is too high chroma. That's what's bothering me about that there. So I'm going to quickly mix a lower chroma version of that light by using the local and adding in a little bit of titanium white to get a lower chroma version. It kind of looks all right, but it just feels like the chroma might be jumping up a little bit high there. Let's do a little bit of gentle blending. So particularly in the shadow areas, I'm going to use this same brush, really, really light pressure, because all of this in the shadow areas is going to be slightly softened. Okay, so I want more texture in the lights and less in the shadow areas. So I want to be careful. I mean, I don't want to overdo this and lose any of the clarity there, but I do want it to be a bit more vague in the shadow because it's more difficult to see. I need to put in what we call occlusion shadow here. So I'm going to go in. Occlusion shadow is the very dark bit of the shadow where there's no light can get in here. So that's with raw umber and a little bit of black. They call it occlusion because there's light bouncing around all over the place, but none can get in here. Very, very little can get in here, like under the apple where it touches the cloth. And that's what gives the impression that something is sitting on something. I'm going to get another brush and I'm going to put the highlight in. Now the highlight, you would be tempted just to go in with white, but it's actually like about a value 8 and it will have some of the local color in it. So that's mostly the yellow part of the apple. So I'm going to mix a value, I think it's going to be about an 8. So I'm going to mix a value 8. I'll overshoot it a little bit actually because it will mix with what's already there. That's titanium white with a little bit of the actual color of the apple in there, the yellow. And some of it will be slightly red as well, so I'll probably need to mix another one too. Come over here. a slightly red version. So red with titanium white for where the highlight is on the red part of the apple. Soften the edges a little bit because the apple is not completely shiny. It's like a satin sort of a texture. If it was a very shiny object, or like if I'd polished the apple first, need a lower value here, then it would have, the highlight would have very hard edges. If it was ceramic or something like that, it would have very hard edges. But because it's and if it was very, very matte surface, then it would have really soft edges. You would hardly see a highlight at all. I think the chroma is still a bit high here, and maybe the value, so I'm going to try dropping it a little bit on the right side of the green. I think that's better. I think that basically the chroma has gone a bit out of control. So this is like the opposite, you could say, of muddy. The chroma is too high on the green, on the light of the green of the apple, so that needs to drop, I think, a little bit. So just looking at the photo, and I'm trying to gauge the right values for the right place. These apples are amazing, I have to tell you. Ginny says, what do they taste? Amazing. They have loads of different ones, and they make cider, apple juice, and also perry, which is cider made from pears. Okay, now I think we're getting closer. Bit by bit, we're edging in on it. Just making small adjustments here and there. The basic foundation of the way the colors move from light to shadow has been established right at the beginning with the color mixing. So now I'm just kind of making the small adjustments that I think I'm going to need. I have a feeling the chroma of my red might be a little bit high. I might have overshot the chroma a little bit on both my colors. Very slightly, and it's just striking me now that I want to drop the value of the background over here. I wonder, actually, I think I might have my camera exposure a bit high. Let's just check that, because it looks better here in the studio. So I'm going to drop the exposure of the camera a little bit, just to see if I can get my big head out of the way. I think that's probably a bit closer to what it actually looks like. Yeah. Something a bit wrong around this area here. I think I'm gonna, if the form is not turning, it feels like a little bit too quick of a transition there. So I'm going to bring some of this yellow over. That looks a bit better. Slightly lighter there to show that change in form. Yeah, we're getting close now. That's brilliant to hear. I used to consider my landscape painting to be mostly just controlling the mud. Now I'm ready to start thinking about controlling it a bit more precisely. That's really good to hear. It does make an enormous difference. Let's try dropping the chroma just a little bit of the red here, which I feel, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit high, maybe it's okay. I'm just wondering if the chroma of the red is just a touch high. except right on the edge. The apple is beginning to appear now. Thank you. For once, a little bit of reflected light down here. So there's some light here which is bouncing the cloth and coming up into the apple there. So I'm going to take the light color and I'm going to mix in a little bit, a slightly higher value, a little bit of slightly higher value neutral to get that feeling of. So it's dropping chrome and it wants to go up a tiny bit in value, just a tiny bit, not too much. Okay, that's nice. I think we're nearly there. The last thing I'm going to do before I wrap this one up is just, I want to bring down the value of the background on the left. There's a dark area there that I haven't really shown. I think it's really gonna, it's always a little bit frustrating when I find that I need to do this towards the end of a painting, because it's hard, I can't get this edge back, this soft, beautiful edge that goes behind the apple. I'll never quite get that back now. So it's a bit frustrating from that point of view, but I definitely feel that a darker value around here is needed, and it's also going to help this bit to show. So I want a hard edge on my apple here. Yeah, definitely prefer that. And we could also probably, I mean, there's more variety like in the folds down here. Now I've painted everything pretty literally at the moment. Little fella's asking to be in again. I would be inclined, for just for the sake of the painting, to allow this fold, which I feel is compositionally a little bit too strong, to allow it to kind of start to disappear a bit as we go off the edge. So it's not, so just to add a bit of kind of atmosphere and mystery around the apple, I'm going to let this like soften right down this edge here, because that's like coming into shadow there. But this I want to keep hard because I want this area really to show nicely. But this, where they're the same value, I'm going to paint across the edge there. This I feel is too strong, so I'm going to soften this edge. These are just like little kind of, I suppose you could say, sort of perceptual things that I would tend to do towards the end of a painting. What do you want, little man? Just to kind of bring the feeling out a little bit more of the actual apple. Thank you. Kind of feel like I've lost, in the softening stage, I lost too many of my, I'm fiddling a little bit now, but I do like this stage of paintings. I lost a bit of my yellow dots like around this area when I softened it, so I'm going to put some of those back in. And the nice thing is, like, I don't have to guess the color. I know what color I need there because I've already got it mixed. You know, I've got real fine control over the color now, so there's no guessing about what I need to put in there. It can just go straight in. Kind of feel like some. So I'm using one of these brushes for softening the folds and all the background, and another one for doing the apple. I wonder if I can. These are like, I mean, this is like what I'm into now is going beyond really what I set out to show and to teach, if you like, in these little things. But this is like the fun part of painting, I think, when you're making the little changes at the end that kind of make it live, and kind of give it a little bit more presence. These bits only work if the colors are really good. If the colors aren't good, you can really mess something up at this point by fiddling too much. But if the colors are really carefully controlled and the values are good and all that stuff, then you can kind of go to town. I think my personal feeling is that if your color and your value are really good, you can be more expressive with the paint handling, because you won't actually destroy the form. You will still be able to keep the form. I think slightly, you don't need this bit, slightly harder edge here, I think would be right. But I also don't have, I need a bit of occlusion shadow down there too, so let's carefully put that in. Just that dark line down there, not dark enough. So this is burnt umber with a little bit of ivory black in it I'm using for this very dark. Oh, cat hair. Saved it. That's nice. And we've lost the integrity of the background a little bit there. That line needs to kind of join up. I would say at this point I'd be fairly happy with this. I'm at the what I think of as the kind of the standing back and deciding stage. So the form is pretty much there. I'm pretty happy with it. The cloth is working. It has some nice atmosphere to it. So I'd be thinking about, well, what does it need as a painting? What would I want to change? It's really important, I think, sometimes just actually to stop and think, right, what? All right, I'm going to fiddle a little bit. Whilst I'm saying that, I'm actually going to fiddle a bit, because I've lost some of my little yellow things, little yellow dots, and think, what does this painting need really now to make it live more? What would I want to change? And if you make those decisions kind of on the fly really quickly, I find generally I often make very poor decisions. So I need to be very careful about, see, I'm actually doing it now. I'm not being careful enough about how I put down these little yellow patches, and they've become too uniform in size and distribution here, and it's spoiling the apple. It's not looking like nature anymore. So let's soften them out. But I basically covered what I wanted to cover, so hopefully you can see like how all this has been built up. So come on, little man. Hello, yes, just a quick recap. We started here figuring out the values, which mostly came from the photo married up to the digital Munsell scale, which I'll send out a link to, so you can download that digital scale. So if you get this, you've got a photo, if you get this and you use my digital scale, which I'll email out a link to, you'll be able to do this same thing with the values, really nail those values, like if you know how to use Photoshop a little bit. Then we did the color mixing of the locals. Then we mixed the light and shadow, and this is how it all comes together to make. Basically, what we're looking for me, is like, a convincing illusion of light and shadow, but also something with a little bit of an air of kind of mystery about it, something. Dennis says, would there be a shadow on the right lower, or would you leave a lost edge? I'm quite happy for that to be there. I mean, there's reflected light down there. I'm quite happy to be able to see the edge, unless you mean like this bit here. There is a bit of a shadow goes up into the apple there, but for me, as long as it looks like there's a form sitting there, I'm not happy with the excuse me, the drawing of that right edge. So that's one thing I would probably change. My apple has ended up a slightly different colour overall. But hopefully you can see, like, actually, the highlight has got lost. Excuse me. You can see just building something up very carefully in stages like this. Excuse me. I'm going to bring that up just a little bit there. Sorry, something stuck in my throat. Aaron says, guess the background should be less blurry as the apple feels hanging in the air. I don't know, I think that comes down to aesthetic choice. Now, personally for me, I love that feeling of kind of atmosphere. That's something that I try very hard to keep. So I'm very happy with that. You know, I like all of this to be almost going out into soft focus at the edge. And the focus to be on the apple, especially with bringing in this hard edge here, which is really pretty much the only hard edge that I've got in the painting, and everything else is blurred. And personally, I feel it really makes the apple have a physical kind of presence there. If you wanted to get something that was closer to reality, then yeah, sure, you know, that would probably be a good thing to do. For me personally, I like this feeling of kind of atmosphere, and for some parts of the painting overall to be very vague. It's something that I go out of my way to make. It's something that I find actually that I do almost unconsciously now. It's become just a part, I suppose, a part of my style, you could say, something like that. Julie says, can you continue the shadow on the right side? I'm not sure what you mean. Which shadow area would you mean? Thanks very much. I learned so much from the demonstration. Excellent commentary. Thank you, Greg. That's really nice. You're all very welcome. Heather says, what kind of apple is it? It's a Chase-Lee kernel. A Chase-Lee kernel. Oh, by the way, if you want to get, if you want to get links to all of the replays for this, I'm just going to put the link in the comments. If you're not already subscribed to my site, if you subscribe there, you will be able to. I'm going to tomorrow at some point. I'm going to email links to all of the replays, reference photos, and the digital scale as well. Oh, my mic is bad. Sorry, just a second. I probably went very quiet. Just give me a minute while I swap my batteries over. See, there's always got to be some bit of technology that's got to go a little bit funny at some point. Today it's my backup mic. We back on? Yeah, I think we're back on. Should be able to hear me better now. So yeah, if you want to subscribe, I mean, obviously I send out a lot of other stuff as well, links to videos and this kind of thing. So you can pop in there and subscribe if you want to. And actually, let me show you, I know some of you are already doing this course. Like, all of this comes from a course that I teach on color. If you want to have a look at it, let me just see if I can find. Oh, actually, I should be able to show you this. Let's see if this works. Yeah, all right, okay, so this here, this is the color course. So it basically, it goes, if you're interested, a couple of people have been asking me where do I teach and stuff like that. almost entirely online, and all of this stuff, God, don't I look young there? I think I made that video a couple of years ago. All of this stuff is basically all of this to the nth degree. So it's all split up into modules. So this one is just like the materials list, everything that you need to get. You need a Munsell book, Munsell student book, which is about $100 to do this course. This is all about mixing and matching colors. So that, the mixing stage that we did is covered in all of these videos here. Basically a description of how you mix all of these colors. There's one here on how to make an accurate Munsell scale using the chips from the book, and then matching a load of different colors, including matching locals. So this is all of this stuff, so this is a video on matching the local of a lemon using the Munsell student book, So all of this stuff is in there too. You look the same. Thanks, Ginia, but I'm pretty sure I do look a little bit older now. Oh yeah, Heather done this course too. Quite a few people here. Ginia, you've got it as well, I think. You got in, that's great. So then, the next module in this course, I've just added a load more stuff in here. So this is modeling light and shadow. I've got to show you the toilet roll. So, I guess it's probably fair to say I'm a little bit obsessed with toilet rolls. So here is a video of a value study painted with it's a different toilet roll, but also done the same way. But, this is quite serious, because remember how we were looking at the steps between the light and the shadow on that toilet roll that we used in this little series. This is the same thing, but in value, So from light to shadow on the lighter local is many more steps than light to shadow on the dark local. And it takes you through, how to paint that. There's one here for a real world application value study, just as I did in the start. And then it goes through to the next module, which is like, then you're into color. So it's basically doing the same thing, just the same way that I did here in color. So this is like a series of assignments. You can download a lot of these videos. The nice thing about this is that you can do it at your own pace. It's you're not so rushed by trying to keep up, And speaking of this, Heather, I remember when you did this exercise as part of this course, and you completely knocked that one out of the park. It was amazing. And there's also some of the stuff here is originally broadcast live, like sessions like this with an audience. This is like a mix video painting this subject here. Similar approach, it's all the same approach, but it goes basically just goes way more into detail. Okay, so if any of that sounds interesting to you, what I'll do actually is, let me see if I can give you the URL for that. Yeah, let me show you that. That's the URL for that course. So if you wanted to join, that URL takes you through to here. It's $200, it's $199. If you go through here, then you put in your details, and then it takes you to the checkout page. But listen, because if you do want to join, because I've just relaunched this course with a load of new stuff, I'm doing a discount on it at the moment. So if you decide you want to sign up, when you get to the page where it asks for your credit card and stuff, there's a little link where it says, do you have a coupon? And if you put that in, hang on, let me just put that into Facebook as well so everybody can see it. If you put that in as your coupon code, you'll get $50 off the course. And it's basically, that's like for life. You have lifetime access, So if you fancy going a bit more in depth with this stuff, this was kind of a whistle-stop tour, really, I suppose. Over the last few days, I've tried to to put in as much as I could. But if you wanted to really go in depth with it and really learn this stuff, then that's where to do it. With you know, if you get yourself a Munsell book, you do actually need a Munsell book. The course is designed to be done with the student book, so you do need a Munsell book to do it. But anyway, that's just if you're interested in that stuff. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up now. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I really hope you enjoyed it. I really hope you found it interesting. Don't forget to subscribe to the blog if you want all of the materials which I'm going to be sending out tomorrow. And I'll see you again very soon. It's really nice to be back doing live streams again, so I'll be doing more of these, I've no doubt, next week and into the future over the winter. Keys, the coupon is keys. I'll pop it in again for you, Anna. Oop, just keys. Just put that code in. And that would be $50 off. That code's probably going to be, it'll work for a few days anyway. I haven't set a timer on it, but it won't be around forever. But I don't want to rush you or anything, you know. Think about it if you think it's right for you. And if you want to ask me any questions about it, email me or message me on Facebook. I suppose I should put my email in as well, shouldn't I? Actually, no, I better not do that. Oh, I've got to do it really. It's just I don't want to get spammed. Do you know what I mean? There's bots that pick up this stuff. But if you have any questions, in fact, if you just have any questions about any of this, you know, you can reach me here. Or private message on Facebook or whatever, you know. I worry about putting my email address like where it stays forever online because it's, you know, bots pick it up and before you know it, you're getting all kinds of stuff. But if you want to get in touch with me, ask me any questions about any of this. I love talking about this stuff. Do get in touch. So thanks very much, everybody, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye for now.